Be'ezrat Hashem, we're starting the Torah all over again this week. Sefer Bereshit, Parashat Bereshit, the book of Genesis, the opening of the Torah, creation of the world, of mankind, of humanity, and ultimately the story of the founding of our family, of the Jewish people, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Imahot, the tribes. We're going to go through all the unbelievable stories that founded our nation. Be'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocheh to deeper learning this year, to try to get in closer into the nuances of the verses of the Psukim, try to really understand it, to get some deep ideas of how to be Jews, how to be human beings, and may all of our learning protect our holy soldiers and all of Am Yisrael in these hard times right now. Be'ezrat Hashem, this limud and Torah is dedicated to every one of our soldiers that are out there fighting right now. Okay, so let's start. Sefer Bereshit, Hashem creates the world. Now, what's the most important part of the creation of the world? What's the apex of Hashem's creation? The apex is the creation of man, of Adam, of humanity, mankind, Adam Harishon, Adam. That is the greatness of what the world is. And every day after Hashem created the world, Hashem looks around, Vayar, and he saw Kitov, that it was Tov, that it was good. A little bit on the second day, Yom Sheni, when Hashem separates the waters, there was a little bit of a machloket, there was a little bit of fighting going on over there, so that day doesn't have Kitov. The Yom Shlishi has two Kitovs, has two goods, but every day he looks around, he creates step by step, and it's good. But then on the sixth day, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates man, he looks and he says, oh my God, Tov me'od, it's very good. Now, man is not just good, it's very good. And the word me'od, very, the Midrash, the stories tell us that me'od is the same letters as Adam, as man, because what made it me'od, what made it very good, it was the creation of man. We are the purpose of creation. Now, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz in his 6 constant mitzvahs says a beautiful idea. He says, what does it mean that the world was very good? Can we quantify? What does it mean? Okay, until now it was good, but now it's very good. What makes it very? How much is very? He says, you can't quantify me'od. You can't quantify the word very. Why not? Because we decide. Hashem created us with such great potential, with such free will to do the most amazing things. Sadly, humanity can also do the most terrible things, as we're seeing. But we have the potential to do unbelievable stuff. And that's why we are me'od. We are very, which means we decide. There's no quantity to it. Our potential is through the roof. We can go as far and as great as beyond what's fathomable. That's how great man can be. So in the very beginning, Hashem goes through the 6 days of creation, step by step, day by day, going through the natural flow of creation. Now, according to most commentators, check out, for example, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, that when it's speaking about the actual creation, it's like a natural flow. This leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing. It just talks about Hashem's creating. Actually, Rabbeinu Bahaye, it brings down certain kind of like scientific ideas that or mystical ideas, two ways of looking at it, that there was an initial creation, initial beginning, and from that beginning, everything else just starts to form out of it. And it's like this very natural idea of step by step. But then HaKadosh Baruch Hu pauses. There's a stop. And he stops to speak about the most important of all creations, the most significant creation. And Hashem says, Naaseh Adam, let us make man. So there's a pause in creation. Until now, it was just step by step. Hashem creates. Now Hashem says, wait a second, before I create man, let's talk about creating man. Let's brainstorm this idea. Let's see what we're about to do, and then we're going to create it. So there's a full pause in creation to emphasize how important is going to be the next creation. And comes along the pasuk and says God, Vayomer Elohim, and says God, Naaseh Adam, let us make man, Betzalmenu Kidmutenu, in our image, in our likeness, Vayirdu B'digat Hayam V'Shamayim V'Vahem B'Chol Haaretz, and they're going to rule over the fish in the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, all the creeping things. Basically, let us create man, and this man is now going to be the ruler over everything. So that's like the vision of creation, that Hashem pauses, and we're going to create humanity, mankind, Adam Harishon, the first man, and he's going to be formed and rule over everything else that I've created until now, because they are now going to be the most important, the ruler of it all. Okay. Now, this pasuk we've spoken about a lot in previous years, but now I want to relook at it and maybe try to get some deeper understandings of what does it mean that God said, let us make man? It's the famous question asked by the Mefarshim. What do you mean in the plural? Who's God talking to? Let us make man. Isn't there only supposed to be one God? What in the world is going on over here? Let us make man. What's happening? And there's been so much ink spilled on this. We spoke in the past about a bunch of ideas. I want to repeat some of those ideas, but then I want to add a couple of new ones, especially in some unbelievable chidushim in Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch's commentary on this verse. Okay, so let's start. What does it mean that Hashem says, let us make man? Okay, so let's look at Rashi. We have the famous answer of Rashi. Now, since this is the first parsha of the year, we should know that every Rashi is the most famous commentator. So every commentary of Rashi is known as a famous commentary. So says Rashi, how does he deal? Why does it say it in the plural? Okay. So says Rashi, Naaseh Adam, let us make man. What does that mean? So it means, Anvetanuto shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu lemanu mikan. We learn from here the anava, the humility of the Holy One, blessed be He. We learn the humility of God from this pasuk. Why is it written in the plural? To teach us the humility of God. How does it teach us that? Lefi she'adam bidmut hamelachim vitkan'u bo. He says, because man is created in the likeness of angels, and they're going to be jealous of man because we look so similar. Lefichach nimlach bahem. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu first speaks to them and consults with them, and therefore let's make a consensus. I want you to realize that I'm creating something that on the surface might look like a competition to you, because we know the angels on a certain aspect are much greater than mankind. They're spiritual. These are spiritual beings. They're holy. They're up in the heavens. So on a simple level, they're much greater than us. Spiritually, they are much greater than us, except there's one thing that makes us very different. Because first, if we have a piece of God in us as well, we have a soul inside of ourselves. We also have, the miracle of creation is the fusing together of the physical and the spiritual, which also leads to us eventually getting a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, into free will, which means we make choices. So while in a certain aspect, angels are holier than us because they're more spiritual, in a different aspect, if we could take what we're given and use our free will to do the right thing, to do mitzvot, to be the best people we could possibly be, we have the ability to be greater than angels. And that's more of a competition. We're the purpose of creation. The angels were not the purpose of creation. We are. We're the ones with our free will to be able to make the right choices. So therefore, in a certain aspect, we're a little bit of competition to them, or they can become jealous of us, or they like as Rashi says over there, they can get jealous. So therefore, as a matter of humility, especially if you realize that a fight can take place, so Hashem is going to bring the board all together, and he's going to speak to them and explain to the angels, okay, this is what's going to happen, get their opinions. And actually, according to some of the midrashim, it's not so clear. Some of the angels were really against this. No, you shouldn't create man. They're going to sin too much. They're going to mess up too much. And there's this whole back and forth between different angels and different symbolic ideas of truth versus kindness versus, and Hashem is juggling all these different opinions, and ultimately creates man. Let's skip now to the next Rashi. He says the next Rashi, Naaseh Adam, in the same words, ve'afal pi shelo si'uhu, and even though the angels did not assist God b'yitzirato in creating of man, realize that ultimately the angels didn't create us. There's only one God and only one God that creates. There's only one real power to the whole world. So only God's going to create. Ve'yesh makom laminim lirdot, and this can lead to the heretics to start making claims. The polytheists, those that believe in many gods, are going to say, oh, has v'shalom, what does it mean, let us make man? There's many gods involved over here. So this is like the perfect ammunition for the heretics. So why would Hashem do this? Why would Hashem leave room for this? Lo nimna katuv milelamed derech eretz. The Torah, Hashem is not going to refrain from teaching us the proper conduct. Umidat anava she'agadol nimlach v'loter b'shut min hakatan. And the level of humility of the greater one, the gadol, he's going to go and speak, and he's going to ask permission from the lesser one out of kavod to other people, to make space for other people. Part of the creation of the world is mystically this idea of Hashem doing tzimtzum, contractions, that Hashem contracts his oneness in some kind of mystical kind of way to create place for other people, and to create place to speak to other people, to give other people have opinions as well, to make space for the others, to speak to those that are lesser than you, that are smaller, that are lower in a lesser position, but to still get their opinions. That'll teach us the level of anava, to teach anava. That's the most important thing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Throughout the Torah, we're going to get little hints and different ideas of how important humility is. We spoke in the past, Parshat Vayikra, the third book of the Torah, starts off the very first word with a small aleph, and that small aleph also teaching us about Moshe Rabbeinu, teaches us about anava, about humility. And if we fast forward to Parshat Ba'alotecha, there's the famous pasuk that tells us that Moshe, the most humble person alive, it says, Vayish Moshe anav me'od. Moshe, it was very humble. Note the word me'od over there. Mikol ha'adam, again, same letters, from all of Adam, from all of mankind. Asher al pnei ha'adama, they're on the face of the Adama, of the earth. We know Adam, language of Adama, comes from the language of the ground, of the earth. So this concept of anava, of being so important, is going to be hinted to over and over and over again throughout the Torah. We spoke about the small yuds all over the Torah, but throughout that, this is what Hashem wants to teach us. Because the greatest midah b'Kadosh Baruch Hu is Hashem's humility in creation. First off, in the creation of the world in general, but even in the creation of man, and when he's speaking to others, we have to realize, you want greatness? Well, the greatest person to ever live, our greatest teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the greatest anav, the greatest humble person, the most humble person ever. And where does he get the Torah? On Mount Sinai, one of the smaller mountains, the humble of all mountains, because this midah is so important that Hashem will even risk the heretics to misuse it, because ultimately, Rashi continues and says, anybody whose eyes are open and who's real and has real faith and understanding, read the next pasuk. The next pasuk says, "Vayivra Elohim et Adam betzalmo," and Hashem created man in His image, and that's written in the singular. So it's clear that when Hashem actually creates the world, it's done in the singular. That it's only a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So it's very clear that Hashem did it. But when it comes to actual midot, Hashem is going to use the plural in the one step before, in the planning phase, so that way we're going to actually get it. Because it says, Rashi, V'im katav e'eseh adam, and if he says, and I shall make man, lo lamanu, we would have never understood, Shem Medaber in Beit Dino, we would have never learned that he spoke to the courts and the holy court, the angels. Ela imatzmo, we would have said, oh, he's speaking to himself, and it's only God doing it, and we would have never learned this issue of, this idea of character traits, derech eretz, being a good person. This is what we're here for. Uchuvat haminim katav betzido, and Hashem answers the heretics in the very next pasuk, vayivrat adam velo katav vayivru, because the very next pasuk says, and Hashem created in the singular. It doesn't say, and they created or we created. It just says it in the singular. So it's clear what the actual meaning. But for the sake of character traits, of humility, of being a good person, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take that risk. So we can learn that as one of the first teachings, or the first teaching when it comes to human beings. Okay, so that's the approach of Rashi. Okay, now I was looking at other approaches this year, and I found that there's another approach, it's actually more simple than Rashi. It doesn't take us into the Midrash land, but says, okay, why does Hashem say, let us make man? So it's not that God is speaking to anybody when He says, let us, but rather God is speaking what's known as the royal we. That Hashem is speaking, it's God talking, and it's only God talking, but speaking in the plural, because it's the way of important people, of the kings, it says, the melachim, to speak in the language of plural, to speak in the language of we makes it much grander, much greater. So right now we're going to be talking about the creation of the greatest creation of everything, humanity. So now Hashem is going to speak in the royal we to emphasize how important it is. Also, when speaking in the royal we, that also demonstrates humility in a much simpler sense. Because when you say the word we, it's not my idea. It's all of it. It's this is for the sake of the world. This is like, when you'll find many times teachers and rabbis, they'll speak about, okay, and we thought about this idea, and we were thinking to say, because what that does is it brings all of the students into it as well, and now everybody's a part of that plan, even though it's really the teachers' thinking and it's their idea, but it's really teaching that my ideas are not just mine, it's really all of us together that came up with it, that did this, and it brings everybody together, and that also is a certain level of humility and a certain level of bringing in everybody together. I saw Rav Saadia go on, Rabbeinu Bahaya, they also speak about the language of kavod. It's more of an honor to speak in the language of we. It makes it more respectable, more important. Rav Hirsch, he actually takes it a step further. He says that when we speak in the royal we, when does the Torah do that? When does God do that? It's when you're speaking about the general interest of the world. When it's something that is so important that it has ramifications that go much further. It's ramifications for the reason of the whole creation. So in that kind of place, the plural will emphasize how important it is. And he says he points to another area where like the scattering of the Tower of Babel, when he dispersed the people after they rebelled against God. So over there also, God speaks in the language of the plural, of let us go down and let's go deal with them. Why in the plural? Because whenever it's grand scale issues that reflect humanity and the future of humanity, so Hashem will speak in the plural. Okay, that was the second approach of the royal we. Then there's the approach of the Zohar. Says the Zohar, this is now the Kabbalah. You find it in the Gaon Vilna. The Vilna Gaon writes in his commentary, Ideret Eliyahu as well. The Zohar asks a side question. It says, why was man created last? If man is the most important, if something is really important, either you create it first or you create it last. That's how it always works. So in this case, man was created last because it's the most important. It's the apex, it's the pinnacle. It's why Hashem created the world. But he asked, but why? Oh, why did Hashem do it that way? He says Hashem did it that way because Hashem wanted to first create all of creation, and then from the creation of the world, put a piece of everything into man. So when he said Naaseh Adam, let us make man, what God is really doing is He's speaking to all of creation and says, okay, everybody put a piece of yourself into man. He speaks to the lions, and lions, you give a little bit to man. He speaks to the tigers. He speaks to the earth. Adam, we know man comes from the physical, from the Adama. Adam is language of Adama, of ground. So Adam, come from and everybody gave a part to man, and ultimately Hashem Himself is going to give us a part of God as well when He blows into Vayipach Be'apav. He blows into our noses, our souls, and that's a piece of man. So we have all of creation inside of ourselves, and that really, in the mystical ideas, that also explains why every mitzvah and every act that we do affects all of creation, because we really are tied to the entire world. Those are the science people. When we get down to like the atoms, the protons, what are we all made out of? We're all made of the same building block materials. So now this Kabbalistic teaching is that Hashem gives all those materials into man, so now it's a part of us. This also helps us understand, there's a halakha, we're supposed to wake up in the morning like a lion. So how could we do that? It's a different meaning because we actually have a lion inside of us. We have to be swift like the deer, like the ibex. We have to be able to go do mitzvot with all these character traits that are inside of us that we get from all over the world, including the soul that ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu blows into us. Now, I actually saw there was a side question: does the Satan did he blow into us a Yetzer Hara? But it appears to be that from the Mekubalim that's not how it happened. That rather, according to the Kabbalists, that the Yetzer Hara only comes later when we ate from the tree of knowledge and messed up. Okay, but that's the Zohar's approach. Naaseh Adam, let us make man, is referring to all of creation, saying all of creation, can you please give a bit of yourself to man? Okay. Then we have another approach. This I think we spoke about in the past at length. This is the approach, I heard it quoted in the name of the Gra, in the name of Rav Soloveitchik, in the name of different Hasidic Rebbes, the Imrei Moshe, the Zohar. They say, who is Naaseh Adam? Who is God speaking to? Let us make man. God is speaking to us. Hashem says, I'll give you a physical body, I'll take the earth, I'll create man, I'll blow into your soul. I'll give you, but then I'm going to give you free will. Bechira chofshit, free will. Now you make the decisions and you decide what to do with what I gave you. So the idea is Hashem says, let us make man. Hashem is talking to us, me and you. We have a corporation, we have a partnership. I'll give you all the materials, both physical and spiritual, but now you have free will. That makes you the greatest of all creation. You decide what to do with it. Become an Adam, become a mensch, become a real human being, and do things right. Okay, so those are the four approaches to why it says the word Naaseh in the plural. But now let's talk about the next word. What do you mean Adam? What do you mean, let us create man? Why is Adam called Adam? So the classic answer, which we mentioned until now, is Adam comes from the language of Adama, that we come from the ground, that there's a physical part to us as well. So we come from the ground, and we're going to end up in the ground after 120 B'ezrat Hashem. But Rav Hirsch comes along and he says, no. He actually learns the opposite. He says that man is much greater than the Adama, than the ground. He says opposite. When we find Adam, he quotes a couple of psukim, we find that man has to be much greater with our potential and our free will. Because we're the fusion of physical and spiritual, and we have free will, we are so much greater than that physical part. And he says, Adama is a borrowed term from the word Adam, meaning as opposed to us being named after the ground is being named for us, because ultimately we have a physical part too. So we're borrowing the term, the physical part of man is being borrowed to talk about the physical part of the world. And that he actually learns it in the reverse. Okay, but the classic approach is actually that Adam comes from the language of Adama, because we have a physical body. But then there's the approach that we can also read the word Adama, not as Adama, but as Adameh, or Edameh, which means, in Hebrew, the word domeh is to be like somebody, to try to mimic somebody. There's a pasuk in Yeshayahu that says that man tries to edameh la'elyon, that we want to try to become like the divine, like God. We want to try to mimic God. We want to become God-like. To be domeh, domeh, we want to try to make ourselves look like God, which means, on the one hand, man might come from the Adama, from the ground, from the most lowest part, the physical of the physical, but we have the potential to be Adameh, to be domeh, to be similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be similar to God and try to get as close and become God-like as possible. For those that are mystical and like our Sha'ar Nun, our 50th gate Torah, so Adameh le'elyon, Adameh is also Aleph Daled Mem Hey, is the same numerical value as 50, hinting to the 50th gate of wisdom, the highest gate of understanding, the Sha'ar Nun. Okay, we spoke about it in the past, that's not for this Dvar Torah. And even the Nachash, the snake, when the snake tries to trick us, so what does he tell us? He says, God doesn't want you to eat from that tree, because when you do it, you're going to be V'item ke'Elohim, you're going to be like a God. You're going to be like a God yourself. And so basically he's saying that because we realize is that deep down we want to be God-like. Now we can want to be God-like in the haughty, terrible sense, and that's a sin and that's terrible. Or we want to be God-like in the beautiful spiritual sense of trying to mimic God and be like God in doing good actions, doing mitzvot, and trying to maximize why we're here in this world. So the idea of Adameh and Adama is that's the two ends of the spectrum of when it comes to humanity. Now also, if you look at the word Adameh, domeh, to be similar, is a word in Hebrew called dimayon. Dimayon means imagination. That we have to imagine. We have to dream. We have to dream big. We know we have Yosef HaTzadik. Joseph was the dreamer. He had chalomot. He had dreams where he would dream about greatness. We have to dream to be great. Dream to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To be Adameh, we have to realize that we have a potential to reach far beyond our more limited, narrow physical experiences. We can reach much, much higher. Rav Hirsch, now let's get into the more new ideas. Rav Hirsch comes along And he says that the word Adam is also similar to a word in Hebrew called Hadom. Hadom in Hebrew, it's an Aleph Hey switch. The Hadom means a footstool, an ottoman. He says, we know that God is king of the world. God is Melech Malchei Melechim, and God sits in mystical writings on the holy throne, the Kisei Kavod, the holy throne of God, of the king. But what makes the throne a throne? What makes it a throne is the Hadom, is the footstool. When Hashem puts his foot up, it's clear to everybody that he's a king, that he's a melech, that he's a king sitting up there. Now, what he says, what is Adam? What is mankind? And what is us? What are we, the Jewish people? We are the footstool of God, which means we demonstrate to the world that God is king. It's our job to reveal to everybody about how to be good people, how to be great people, how to change the world, and that there's a God in this world, that there's meaning in this world, and there's great ideas in this world. That's the footstool. That's what Adam stands for. We are the footstool of God. It's our job to reveal what is the purpose place of man. He actually says that, animals, behema, an animal in Hebrew is behema, is similar to the word bama. Bama is a platform. So he says there's two different ways to have platforms. You have a bama, which is a platform to go higher. It's like a stair. It's like going up onto a stage. It's supposed to elevate you from lower to higher. A footstool, it's also like a mini platform, but the point of the footstool is to go down. It's for the feet to have something to go on. So he says the animals, the behemah, comes from the language of a bama, that's the platform to go up, meaning the physical world is supposed to be used to elevate and go higher. But man, we are the footstool, which is to bring down the heavens down to earth, to bring down spirituality down to down below. It's our job to bring up down, and we use the world to bring down up. But okay. But then I saw one last idea in Rav Hirsch, which I think is totally awesome. Says Rav Hirsch, Adam, Aleph, Daled, Mem, these three letters are also the same letters as the word Adom, red. So I saw some other commentaries say this as well, that Adam is the language of red because, red symbolizes the physical side. It's the blood that's inside of us. It's our pinkish complexion when compared to all of the rest of the creations. All the other animals were much more redder and pinkier. But Rav Hirsch focuses on red from a very different angle, looking at the color spectrum. Says Rav Hirsch, when you take light and you put light through a prism, so what takes place? What comes out is the visible spectrum. It's the rainbow that comes out. And the rainbow begins with red, the Roy G. Bib. We're going to go from the red all the way up to the blues and the violets. Says Rav Hirsch, when you look at the red, when it comes to the light, is the first area where the light refracts, the first area where the light bends. This gives it the highest wavelength because it's the least amount of bend. So he says if we have the original light, red is the closest to the original light. So he says, now let's learn it symbolically. We have God, the ultimate light. Light a lot of times we're going to use to symbolize godliness and heaviness and shamayim and heavenly kind of ideas. So let's take it now symbolic. You have yourself the or, you have yourself the original light, you have Kadosh Baruch Hu. The first break is what creates red, what creates Adom, which means Adam, meaning we are the closest creation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are the closest to what God is all about. Now, we know when it comes to this great light, that the light is much greater than anything we can actually see. Visible light starts with the red, goes to the violets. Now, we've created technology to see, infrared, to see ultraviolet on the other spectrums, but there's so much out there, which meaning God is so much greater than what we can see. But in the physical world that we can see, the first level is Adom, which becomes Adam, symbolically, meaning mankind. We are the closest to the Creator himself, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, that's what Rav Hirsch says. Now, I was thinking, in my humble opinion, I was thinking that maybe we can take this idea and look at it from a slightly different angle. So the light refracts from the world and it turns into this rainbow that we have. And it's red on one side, that's the Adom, that's the Adama, that's the ground, that's where we come from, that's the red, that's our root of man. But then, what's the other side? The other side of the spectrum are the blues and the violets. And I think based on previous Divrei Torah we've said in the past, that might be symbolized in the Torah by the color techelet. The techelet string, that blue, violet, turquoise kind of color, that's the color at the end of the spectrum. And what do we know about that color? That color, we're supposed to look at it. We put it on our tzitzit and we look at it and we say, oh, the blue reminds us of the ocean, reminds us of the sky, of the heavens, reminds us of the Kisei Kavod, of God's holy throne itself. It symbolizes the heavens and getting all the way up to God. So I was thinking that's the other end of the spectrum, that what is man's job in this world? We start off as the Adam, as the Adom, as the red. We start off at the beginning where the light breaks the least, where we're closest to God on the one angle. But then our job is to go the whole spectrum of light into this world to get to the other end of the spectrum, which is symbolized by the heavens. We had Adam, Adama, the ground, the beginning, but then we look towards the blue, the violets, we look towards the heavens to get all the way back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shamayim. Use our dimayon, use our imagination, but get ourselves all the way as close as possible to the light from the other end of the spectrum. Shabbat Shalom.